Jeeves, I recollect saying, on returning to the apartment, who was the fellow who, on looking at something, felt like somebody looking at something? I fancy the individual you have in mind, sir, is the poet Keats, who compared his emotions on first reading Chapman's Homer to those of stout Cortes when, with eagle eyes, he stared at the Pacific. Ah, the Pacific, eh? Yes, sir, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. Of course, yeah. It all comes back. Well, that's how I felt this afternoon on being introduced to Miss Pauline Stoker. Press the trousers with special care tonight. I am dining with her. In New York, one gets off the mark quickly in matters of the heart. This, I believe, is due to something in the air. 2 weeks later, I proposed to Pauline. She accepted. So far, so good. But, mark the sequel. Scarcely 48 hours after that, a monkey wrench was bunged into the machinery, and the whole thing was off. The hand that flung that monkey wrench was the hand of Sir Roderick Glossop. In these memoirs of mine, I have made frequent mention of this old pot of poison. A bald-domed, bushy-browed blighter, ostensibly a nerve specialist, but in reality nothing more than a high-priced loony doctor, he has been cropping up in my path for years. What brought him to New York was one of his periodical visits to J. Washburn Stoker's second cousin, George. This George was a man who had begun to feel the strain a bit. His conversation was odd, and he had a tendency to walk on his hands. He had been a patient of Sir Roderick's for years, and it was the latter's practice to dash over to New York every once in a while to take a look at him. He arrived, on the present occasion, just in time to read the announcement in the papers that Bertie Woosters and Pauline Stoker were planning to do the wedding glide. He was at the telephone instantly, ringing up the father of the bride-to-be. Well, what he told J. Washburn about me I cannot say, but at a venture I imagine he informed him that I had once been engaged to his daughter Honoria, and that he had broken off the match because he had decided that I was balmy to the core. He would have touched, no doubt, on the incident of the cats and the fish in my bedroom, possibly also on the episode of the stolen hat and my habit of climbing down water-spouts, winding up, it may be, with a description of the unfortunate affair of the punctured hot water bottle at Lady Wickham's. He had little difficulty in persuading J. Washburn that I was not the ideal son-in-law. Within 48 hours of the holy moment, I was notified that it would be unnecessary for me to order the new sponge-bag trousers and gardenia, because my nomination had been cancelled. And it was this man who was having the cool, to come calling at the Wooster home. I mean, I ask you. I resolved to be pretty terse with him. I was still playing the banjolele when he arrived. Those who know Bertie Woosters best are aware that he is a man of sudden, strong enthusiasms, and that when in the grip of one of these, he becomes a remorseless machine, tense, absorbed, single-minded. It was so in the matter of this banjolele playing of mine. Since the night at the Alhambra, when the virtuosity of Ben Bloom and his 16 Baltimore buddies had fired me to take up the instrument, not a day had passed without its couple of hours' practice, and I was twanging the strings like one inspired, when the door opened and Jeeves shovelled in the foul strait-waistcoat specialist to whom I have just been alluding. Since I had first been apprised of the man's desire to have speech with me, I had been thinking things over, and the only conclusion to which I could come was that he must have had a change of heart, and decided that an apology was due me for the way he had behaved. It was, therefore, a somewhat softened Bertie Woosters who now rose to do the honours. "Ah, Sir Roderick," I said. "Good morning." Nothing could have exceeded the courtesy with which I had spoken. Conceive of my astonishment, therefore, when his only reply was an unpleasant grunt. My diagnosis of the situation had been right off the bull's-eye. He couldn't have been glaring at me with more obvious distaste if I had been the germ of dementia praecox. Well, if that was his attitude, well, I mean to say, my geniality waned. I drew myself up coldly, raising a stiff eyebrow. I was just